Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dropping the Gloves. Thank you for joining us. Tim, it's not often I get a player to come on the show who I kind of look up to, who when I was playing, I kind of molded my game after him. And it's not a stretch to say that this guy was a modern day Renaissance man. He kind of does it all. He's shirking now, but he was. You want to play physical? Let's go. We'll play physical. I'll bury you through the boards. You want to score goals? All right, I'll put two or three on the board. You want to fight? I'll crush your face in. Whatever you want to do, I will do it, and I will do it better than you. Shea Weber, better than Shea Weber. More talented, tougher. A power play specialist, he's the best that's ever existed. He holds the records for most power play goals in a season with 19. I'm very happy to have this guy in our show. I was terrified of him during my playing years. I played against him many times. I watched him destroy one of my teammates in Craig Weller while I was in the press box, thankfully eating popcorn and just getting fat. Sheldon Souray is joining the show. Thank you, Sheldon, for joining us, my man.
Buddy, man, I wish you were my agent. Wow, that was some crazy stuff right there. It's going
That
to be
came
that
to me
kind of interview,
yesterday.
huh?
Yesterday, honestly, I was thinking about this. I'm like, Sheldon Souray. I'm like, this guy, because I was just behind you. I was born in 82. I think you were born in 70-ish.
Six, yeah,
Six.
7, 6,
I
yeah.
was just behind you. So when I was entering the league, when I was trying to take that next step, I'm like, who do you, want to pattern your game after? And I was taller. I wasn't as good as you, but I'm like, man, this guy does it all. Oh, like literally tough, can put points on the board, got a cannon of a shot, responsible defensively, does everything, absolutely everything. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheldon.
I think you are exaggerating greatly the level of skill I had, but it's very nice of you to say. I tried to get better as I went along. I mean, starting out, you know how it is. You kind of have to prove yourself, and then guys like you come in the league, and I can't punch that far above my league. So just it was just kind of a gradual progression. I think when I first started, I was in New Jersey, and I was put in a little bit of a box of how they wanted me to play, um and that style at that time kind of fit what I was doing. Kenny Danico was getting a little older, and Lyle Lowline was getting a little older. I certainly didn't think I was Scott Stevens, but they needed someone to maybe take a little pressure off that. And I think especially early in my career in New Jersey, I kind of accepted that. And I was fine with it, playing 10, 12 minutes a night, being the sixth, seventh guy, and kind of contributing where I can. I mean, back in the day, all you had to do was cross check good.
Yep.
If you could clear the crease out, then you were doing your job. Um, but as I started going along, I got maybe some more opportunity. I got different perspective, and as you know, being having to fight is the hardest job in hockey. There's just no question about it. It's just the hardest thing. There's so much pressure on you, and I didn't like that. And I knew that there's guys like you and the Boogeyman, and the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
McGrattan, and the list just keeps going on. And I wasn't going to be in the league long if I was trying to keep up with those guys. So it was just kind of an evolution and luck, getting put in the right opportunities, and anybody could score goals on the power play with Andrei Markov or Alexei Kovalev, saucering you the puck across the seam. So I was a benefit of playing with really good players.
Well, it's easy to say that, but there was probably 50 other guys who were put in that same spot who didn't amount to nothing. So you obviously had to have some kind of talent. But let's go back to Jersey. You mentioned they were trying to put you in a box. And I was in that same situation where I was coming in. I came out of college. I didn't fight. I spent 4 years at Michigan Tech just working on how to make a pass and, high and hard off the glass. So I was thrust into this role as like, okay, you're going to be fighting the toughest guys in the world on a nightly basis, like heads up, because just your size. So what box were they trying to make you put into? Because you had a good final season in the dub. You came in, I think you had 54 points that year. You split it between Prince George and Kelowna. So you were successful, but you also racked up 180 penalty minutes. So this wasn't foreign to you. So you're in Albany trying to work your way to the Devils. What were they trying to mold you to be? Kind of like give us the conversations that were going on between you, your agent, and the coaches. Because I always find this interesting where you're a skill guy and they're trying to make you do, was it, you say you didn't want to, but what's going on in your head there?
Well, I think, you know, the way that New Jersey was playing back in the day was a rough and tumble, simple, very clean defensive game. Like
Yeah.
you know, we were happy to win games 1-0, 2-1. You know, get 15 shots against. Like we're kind of that kind of team organization, and I knew why I knew that I had that skill set in junior, but as you know, junior and NHL is a lot different. Everyone's good in the NHL, right? And
Yeah.
so I think what they had told me was, you know, there's some guys like Kenny Danico is probably the guy they were grooming me to replace. And Kenny wasn't playing the power play. He was being a tough physical guy. He was being a good teammate. Then we had guys in the minor like Jason Smith, Cale Hulse. So we
Mm,
had all these tough dudes who were, you know, really good defensemen. And I think once I got my opportunity, I think Kenny Danico got hurt, or maybe he went to treatment or something like that. And I got an opportunity, so I slid in there, not thinking that I was going to be Scott Niedermayer. You
yeah.
know, so I knew I wasn't going to be playing the power play or whatever. So I think it was just, you know, they just had all these interchangeable parts, and the interchangeable part for me was a guy like Kenny Danico. So I just keep it simple, don't get any trouble, and be a good teammate was kind of the box. I feel like, you know, I maybe they didn't put me in it, but I definitely wasn't thinking that I was there to do anything different than, you know, than that.
High and hard off the glass.
That's it.
That's all you
Simple.
had to do to survive. And so you survived that first year. This was before their Stanley Cup success. So they were growing something there with the Devils. Could you see the ingredients there with the Stevens, the Niedermayers, those types of players? They were still young like you. Did you feel this camaraderie? Like, here we go, fellas. Like, because you were up there the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, well, the the year I got drafted, they had lost in the semifinal to the Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
The year that I got drafted and then played in Albany and then and was a black ace in New Jersey, won the cup in Albany, the Calder Cup, and then New
Mm-hmm.
Jersey won the cup that year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh man, this is easy. This, you know, this is how it's going to be forever. That wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
And then we were the President's Trophy winners, I think, a couple of years. We lost in the first round one year to Ottawa, and then the next year we lost maybe in the second round. And so they, you know, it was just they needed to change something. And to be honest with you, I kind of seen the writing on the wall. At the time, the coach who was there and I weren't seeing eye to eye. I probably wasn't as dedicated to the game as they would have liked me to be, you know, young guy living in New York. I was just happy to be there. Um, and so I probably shortchanged myself and them a little bit. I have all the respect in the world for Lou Lamoriello. He told me how it was. He gave it to me, you know, straight. There was no black and white. And you know, at the time he was making the move to make the Devils, but and then they won the cup that year. I got traded right before the trade deadline. They won that year in 2000. So
Which is fun.
yeah, that's great. Just watching them play, you know, being out of the playoffs and then watching them win the cup. That was a fun summer. But you know what? I will tell you, just the level of class that organization has. So the next year they win the cup. I go to Montreal the next year around Christmas time. I get a Christmas card from the owner of the Devils, and he loved his dogs more than he loved anybody. He loved his dogs. So there's a picture of him and his dog sitting in the Stanley Cup, and I'm like, you And I open it up and there's a full playoff share bonus. And he said, "Hey, you were a big part of this, and just want you to know that we appreciated what you did and everything." And I was floored. I mean, at the time I wasn't making a lot of money.
Wow.
And I remember calling Lou Lamoriello and saying, "Hey, man, this is like, I'm blown away. Thank you guys." And that was kind of honestly a jumping off point for me and being like, "Hey, man, like I can do this. Like someone seen something in me to think this." And I just remember saying to myself, like, I have to be better. I have to give more and be better.
No kidding. So that one little
Yeah.
act of kindness by the owner or the president changed your mindset that much. Crazy.
Yeah, I didn't get new look, and you know this as well as anybody. If you're looking for compliments and hey, good job,
Yeah,
you're in
you're
the
not
wrong
gonna find it.
business. That's not how it works, right? So I think I had always been, you need to do this, you need to do that. I'd always been told that. So I always felt like this pressure of like, man, I'm not doing good enough. And that's the truth. I just wasn't unlocking my potential, I guess. But I felt like someone seen that in that moment. And the talk I had with Lou about, he traded me for my benefit to go and be better and flourish in a different system. It just gave me a real shot of confidence and a mindset of like, wow, this is the big leagues. Like you have to,
Hmm.
a little less after the game you know, fun and a little
Yeah.
more dedication to the craft.
So before we move on from the Devils, I want to ask you come up with this team, you're 21, 22 years old, and there's two of the best defensemen ever to play the game on the blue line with you. Very different players, Stevens and Niedermeyer. What did you learn from each of them? Did they teach you stuff? Did you model your game after little things that they did? What was that like?
I mean, those are two great examples. Scotty Stevens was like an idol for me. Him and Chris Chelios were the two guys that I was like, wow, if I could, play against them one game, my life would be set. And Scotty Stevens showed me what it was to come to work every day, every practice, and be a professional. Like every day our practices were harder than our games sometimes. And he was a no nonsense guy. And I love that he would stick out, he was going out and fighting Lindros and when Lindros was a menace. So I really learned what it's like to be a professional from him. And Scotty Niedermeyer, I just I just watched him in admiration. Like I felt like a fan when I watched him play. Um, just complete class. And I think what I learned from him probably is not to take everything. Not everything is so. Those are two different guys, right? Scott Stevens is like a come to the rink. He's biting glass and spitting nails, and he's just ready to go. And Scotty Niedermeyer is like doesn't have a drop of sweat on him. He just played 27 minutes, and he's got his skate laces undone in intermissions. And so, two very different guys, but both just such leaders. And the other thing those guys did, even that whole team, that whole organization, which still admire to this day, is they took care of the young guys. Like we were all a team. There wasn't like Scott Stevens is, up here perennial all-star, and then and Marty Brodeur, don't forget him, right? Um, so we had all these guys, and it was just really a team. And I'd never played on a team ever after that I felt that kind of closeness and camaraderie.
And you think just those three guys having the top end guys were the main cause of that, the catalyst of just that environment?
Well, those are three Hall of Famers. We
Yeah,
had
right.
Dougie Gilmore, who's a tremendous dude. We had Randy McKay, Bobby Hope. The list just kind of went on. Our rookies were Scott Gomez.
Hmm.
So we always had high character guys, and you know how it is when you're on a team like that. One bad person can spoil it, and you're kind of out. And well, maybe I was that guy because I was out, but no, we just had such a good group of guys, and for a young guy, like that was really a internship in professionalism.
I was just golfing with Randy McKay last week, I think, and he was talking about that fourth line. It was like him, Holik, and somebody else. And that's when Holik was making like 5 million on the fourth line. And he was putting up 60 points.
Yeah, he was. We had who was it? It was Bobby, Randy, the crash line we called them. And I can't remember who the last guy was, but man,
Unstoppable.
they were just so good. When that's your fourth line, when you have guys going out like that can play.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, we were pretty good. I was lucky
I'll
to be on
ignore
those
that
teams.
little insult at the end there that I can play. I'll let that slide, Sheldon. But so you leave the Devils. Lou does you a favor. He says, "I'm going to trade you for your benefit." Always interesting kind of thing to say from a GM, because I've had GM say that to me too. I'm going to do you a favor here. You get better options here, opportunities. You go to Montreal. Everything's good. I was reading all the comments from the Montreal Canadiens fans. You're loved there, beloved. They loved you in Montreal. You put up incredible numbers. I'm talking like all-star numbers. You're getting 26 goals, 12 goals, 15 goals. You're putting up insane PIMs. What clicked in Montreal? I'm not saying it didn't click in New Jersey. I know you say you're playing the Ken Daneyko role. You're more conservative. You're new to the league, so maybe you weren't comfortable. You didn't want to make too many mistakes. 3 years into Montreal, you're all of a sudden an all-star defenseman. What happened?
So my first year there was, pretty forgettable. Nothing. We didn't have a very good team, and just kind of got through the season. My second full year there, I broke my wrist, and I couldn't get healthy. Like, it just wouldn't heal. I broke the scaphoid bone, which apparently is the worst bone to heal in your wrist. And so I was having like multiple surgeries on this. And I just had my daughter, my oldest daughter. So now we're talking like 2003. And the doctor says, well, you might not play again. Like, we don't know if you'll be able to play again or not. And I'm like, well, I'm making $1 million. I'm spending $1 million too. I just had my kid. I'm gonna play, right? And I was sitting in the press box one night in Montreal. There was a couple scouts down for me, and I was just sitting there watching the game. And I remember one guy said, I don't know who they were, but the one guy said the other, you know what Montreal really needs? They need a big, tough defenseman that can really shoot the puck on the power play. And I'm like, well, I can do that. Those are two easy things, right? Those are things that would come natural. That's better than a guy who can quarterback the power play, or better than a guy who can go out there and fight all the toughest guys. So, that kind of really dawned on me. And it was kind of those two things kind of met, where I for sure wasn't going to give up on my career at that point. And if I came back, I wanted to have that opportunity. So I worked my butt off to get back. And someone gets hurt, whether it's Brisebois or someone got hurt on the power play, and we had a bunch of injuries, and I think they just kind of looked down the bench and like, dude, you're up. And like I said, we had the talent we had on our power play was crazy. So much so that, like, I remember on the power play, like, our coach was like, hey, if they shoot the puck down, we don't want you skating back to get it. We don't want you to handle it. Let Markov take it out.
No kidding.
Kovalev go, swear to God. I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I just skated up the left wing all the time. And once we got in the zone, I just switched over with Marky. So they really dumbed down my, what I had to do, my responsibilities. And we just started having a little bit of luck, and then we got a little bit of chemistry, and then all of a sudden we're like on a heater. And the coach, Guy Boucher, was taking me out before and after practices and shooting a ton of pucks. And he's seen something in me that I probably didn't even see in myself. And again, once I felt that, I was like, well, I don't want to let this guy down. I'm getting a pretty decent opportunity here. So things just started going well. And I really didn't forget that my main job was to be a physical guy who could clear the front of the net and be a good teammate. And then it just started kind of snowballing in a positive way.
There's a few things there I got to unpack, because that's crazy. First of all, that you just overhear a scout saying something and then it just clicks. But the big thing for me is, I think people forget how mental hockey is, and
Mhm.
how confidence in yourself is almost non-existent in the game unless you're one of the top guys.
Yeah.
Being a third or fourth defenseman or a guy who's in the lineup, to have the head coach spend the time and say, "You're my guy. Let's go. Let's work on it."
Mhm.
Like, how much did that just boost your confidence? Because it was always there, Sheldon. Like, you had an incredible shot your whole career. It's not like all of a sudden you fire a couple more 100 pucks and it's like, oh my goodness, look what I just developed. No, you've always had it. What speak on the mental side? Because I think people just think we're robots, and it's just like you go out there and you do it. It's like, what's it like to
Yeah.
have the head coach pull you aside and say, "You're going to be my guy. I'm going to have Alexei Kovalev, a future Hall of Famer, feed you biscuits, and you're going to bombs away."
Yeah, you're right. It's people really see the athletes and the games they play as, oh God, that must be so, it's, you guys are so lucky, you're so fun, right?
You're living the
They don't
dream. Yeah.
they don't see the other stuff. They don't see the hard work. They don't see the anxiety you have being a third or fourth liner or a fifth or sixth defenseman, not knowing if you're going to be on the team the next. You have a bad game, you could be down in the minors and you could be done, and so there's a lot of like anxiety, there's a lot of mental toughness, there's a lot of belief in yourself, exactly like you said. And once you start getting an opportunity, you don't want to let it go, right? You need to be ready for that. And it just happened that, I was getting an opportunity and I felt like someone believed me. I felt like when I got traded, someone believed in me. So it was just kind of a little more of like, hey, I can do this. And when I was in Montreal, by the way, I wasn't looking to step over Scott Stevens or Scott Niedermayer. Like I was never going to be a first or second defenseman there. I just wasn't, right?
Yep.
But once I got to Montreal, it was like I have an opportunity here to change my game a little bit. And so that's just kind of what happened. And it's a lot more comforting knowing you're a top guy coming in. You don't have this anxiety and pressure of just staying in the league, never mind um all the extra stuff that goes into it. I don't have to tell you, right? The bag
Yep.
skating, the extra video, the extra weight room. It just is it's a lot. So when you get an opportunity and things, I don't want to say become easier, but it's a different stress. The stress is to produce, not like, wow, am I going to have a job tomorrow? So it just kind of got easier. I really enjoyed that kind of people really, obviously they love a good fight, that better than anybody, but they also love, like, a slap shot in the top corner on the power play against Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday night. And that was a better feeling than, having a good fight for me. And so that's kind of where I wanted to get my game to.
Well, and playing in a city that they really acknowledge when you're playing the right way. I remember when I was with Montreal, all of one game, which was a great game. I had a good shift. We had a good shift as a fourth line. It was me and Paulie Byron and I think it was De La Rosa. We grinded it out. We almost scored. We had a good shot on net. Going back to the bench, they standing ovation.
Yeah.
Like they really appreciated good hockey. And it's kind of neat that they probably saw your progression from the first 3 years there, where it was forgettable. Like you were playing probably solid hockey, but then to see you blossom into this like incredible defenseman. Let's just call a spade a spade. You were one of the elite defensemen in
Thank
the
you.
NHL at that point. You 81 games, 64 points, still putting up hymns. By the way, let's talk about that. And then we'll move on to the debacle that is known as the Edmonton Oilers. You had 135 minutes in penalties. You had 3 fights. Fights, the last time I checked, are 5 minutes. So it's 120 penalty minutes of minors, of tens, where you just cussing out the refs, where you got your feelings hurt, and you're like, what was, how do you get 120 pims, Sheldon?
I don't think there was a lot of 10-minute misconducts.
Those are all twos.
There was a lot of cross-checking, a lot of slashing. Even I experienced it with you. You're going to come and, cross-check me and you want to go. I'll cross-check you back. I don't want to fight
Yeah.
you, but I'm going to stand my ground, right? And all right, you guys are both gone for 2. Okay. come back to the bench. And thank God, I remember the one time that you were looking for action against us. I was scared to death of you. And I remember Mac T yells at me from the bench, "Hey, you better not." And I'm like, okay. Thank God, coach. You just saved you just saved me. So it was a lot of like penalties in there of just being tough. I also think like after the lockout in 2005, when the
Yeah.
rules started changing,
Yeah.
my PIM started going down, because now you can't hook a guy on the arm. Like, you used to cross check a guy in front of the net and knock him flat on his butt, and your coach would say, "Hey, great shift." Right. So a lot of those, a lot of just playing rugged and tough. And with that, the flip side of that too is, if you're doing something to the team that's valuable, which is, getting points or playing the power play, your leash gets a little bit longer with some of the other
Yeah.
stuff that you can do, right?
Yeah.
If you're that sixth defenseman and you're that fourth line winger, you don't even want to touch anyone, because you don't want to get a 2-minute penalty and then sit your butt on the bench for the rest of the game, right? So I had a little bit of that too. I had a little flexibility in my game where they still wanted me to be, have a mean streak, but still wanted me to play all the power play. So it was just a little figuring that out, for a season or two, and what I could get away with, what I couldn't. And slowly that declined, and I could play more, and the rules were changing. The
Yeah.
rules were changing.
What was it like spending 1.2 million and only making $1 million? How does that work? Because I'm not an accountant. What are you doing in
That was
Montreal?
stressful.
What?
That
Yeah.
was stressful. Forget the anxiety that was anxiety away from the rink.
You
Right
just had a
there.
nice place downtown and a nice car, or what?
Dude, I was just young, and it's probably an exaggeration. I was, still making a little bit of money, but I just couldn't believe, where I come from, no one had, and no one is supposed to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
So I was really just like, I was enjoying it all. I was enjoying the life of being a professional athlete, and, being in New York and going to Sports Illustrated parties or Maxim parties, or, movie premieres, or, doing commercials. I was in a soap opera one time, and I remember driving home from this thing, the soap opera, and Lou had found out. And so I see my phone. I said, it's the middle of summer. I said, I'm either getting traded or, so here it is. I'm getting traded. And he said, what? And we're talking like, this is July, what the hell do you think you're doing? And you better focus on hockey. And he dressed me down, and I was like, wow, this is July. I still got, 2.5 months till training camp. I thought you'd be happy you have a soap opera star in your team. Never mind giving me trouble. But no, he didn't see it that way. But I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the life that comes with it. I mean, we do get treated like pretty good.
Well, it doesn't hurt that you're good looking. You know what I mean? I didn't get asked to be on a soap opera, and I played with the Rangers. So,
Yeah,
you're a
but
very humble man.
they're going to make a movie about you. Never mind.
But they're
so
not going to
you're
get
gonna
me
have
to
your
play
own-
it. They're probably going to ask you, what's Sheldon Souray doing?
Oh man, I couldn't
They
do it.
will.
It's just too magical, your story.
Is that why you're living in Idaho? You just wanted to step away? You just needed to get away from that life?
When I retired, I mean, I know you said we'll probably talk about the Edmonton thing, but when I retired, I was so done with hockey. I was just done. But I had already, I was living in Malibu in the beach, with Chris Chelios. We became good friends, and
Okay.
I met Wayne Gretzky through him, and I was playing on the Oilers at the time, so kind of developing a little rapport with Gretzky. And he said, "Hey, you got to go check out Idaho." This is like 2010, 2011. So I came up here, and there's a bunch of hockey guys here. So, Ray Whitney, Brendan Morrow, Kelly Chase, Barrett Jackman, Brett Hall. So we had Doug Waite. So we had a really good contingency of hockey guys up at this particular golf club. I didn't even know how to play golf at the time, but when I came up here, it was a perfect disconnect for hockey. Not that California isn't, but it was it reminded me of Alberta, just better weather, no bugs. The people were really nice. It was a little different than the California vibe, and I just loved it. I've always felt like Idaho is home for me. So this is like my favorite place of all the places I've ever been. Idaho's home.
Wow. Well, you mentioned Alberta. Let's just jump into the Edmonton Oilers.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a free agent coming off a fantastic season with the Habs, set the power play goal record. How many teams are calling you? Every single one? They want Sheldon Souray in a bad way?
We definitely had some interest leading up. I guess I'll set the table a little bit. So at the end of that season, I had to have shoulder surgery.
Okay.
And that was like my fourth or fifth one that I was to have. So I wouldn't even have been ready for training camp the next year, right? And so leading up to that, like free agency, not that there was a lot of teams that could call you before, but my agent said, "Hey, we've done talked to this team and that team, and you're probably going to have to go in and get a physical." Well, I wouldn't have passed the physical at that time because I just had shoulder surgery.
Okay.
This is like end of May, mid to end of May, and so there was a little trepidation there, and then free agency starts. There was a couple teams that we were heavily invested in. Well, they put out a couple offers to a couple guys, and they were hoping to get one of those guys, and then they would fit me in with whatever was kind of left. Well, the Rangers ended up signing both these guys, and so the other team that I was talking to was the Kings, and then they called me late the first day of free agency and said, "Hey, we're not going to spend all the money on one guy," because they thought they were each going to get one guy. So I was figuring I was going to LA or New York. Well, the first day things change, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, like everything I've been thinking about for this last month is completely, it's gone. Um, and so it took a little while to digest that. Now, as you're kind of taking, I just had another baby, my second kid, and so that was playing into it. As a single dad, was going through a divorce, so I kind of wanted to be back on the West Coast. A lot of things went into it,
Yeah.
and so it's taken a couple days, right, to figure it out. And now all of a sudden we're like July 8th, and all these teams are wanting me to fly in and do physicals. Well, I know I'm not going to pass the physical. We're open and on. I mean, you can read it right on the friggin' report, right?
Yep.
And so what happened was Edmonton had called me, and we talked, and then I really didn't want to go back to Canada because I knew my ex-wife didn't want to go back to Canada. Edmonton was kind of the only place because now I would have help from a personal side with my family being there.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked it over with my mom and dad, and they were really excited. See me wearing an Oiler jersey was really kind of important to them. And so the more I thought about it at night, there was another team we were talking to, and Edmonton just kind of came up a little bit in the money, and it just made sense. They didn't care about my shoulder. I didn't have to fly in anywhere. They didn't care. Kevin Lowe knew I wasn't going to be ready for training camp. It just was the easiest, and it made a lot of sense at the time. Yeah, exactly. It just made sense at the time. So when I signed there, I was actually pretty excited. They just lost in the finals the year before. They just lost Chris Pronger. They were looking, to fill a couple holes. They weren't expecting me to be Chris Pronger, but they just gone to the finals with almost the same team, right? So if they could just fill a couple of those roles with guys who could sort of mimic that, then they thought they would be okay. And so we signed Dustin Penner to an offer sheet that year, and so things were kind of looking up. So I was kind of getting the longer it went on, I was kind of getting excited about things, about being back home.
Yeah, we had Pronger on the show last year, I think, and we talked about his time at Edmonton, and he really didn't enjoy it. He had nothing but he was very polite about it, but he's like, yeah, it was terrible. I was ready to move on from Edmonton. His family didn't enjoy it. He was ready to get out of Dodge. Every time I was a free agent, I'm from Edmonton. I was born there.
Hey,
So
really?
yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
my
I didn't
mom
know
was
that.
born in northern Saskatchewan. She didn't have two pennies to rub together. We lived in the trailer park. We were dirt poor. So Edmonton always offered me a deal when I was a free agent, but I'm like, I'm
No
not going to take it.
way.
Yeah, always,
Yeah.
always, always. I could have played with
Wow.
you, but something was always just saying like, don't go to Edmonton. It just didn't seem right. They were selling me the world,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to underdeliver.
Yeah.
You get 25 years, 27 schmil. You're happy. You're financially secure for the rest of your life, most likely. What happened? You don't go into detail. I don't care. What happens over the next 3 years?
So I will say this is that Edmonton wasn't my highest money
Wow,
or
Sheldon.
contract offer. Yeah.
Who
So
who
they
offered you more?
well, there was two teams. One team on the East Coast that I just didn't want to go. They had a lot of Russian players, and I just didn't think that would be a good fit for me.
I
And there
like your
was
jib because I don't like Russians either.
and there was a well, I just at the time I just didn't see like, and plus coming from a team like Montreal where we had just a bunch of great dudes, like we weren't
Yeah.
the best team in the world, but we had, Koivu and Craig Rivet. We just had a lot of really good guys.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't see my fit over there. And now again, we're on the East Coast. So I probably wouldn't see my kids as much. My ex-wife isn't gonna want to travel all the East Coast. So
Mhm.
and then there was another team in the West Coast that I just didn't want to play for. There's
Tim,
just no
he still won't name the teams, Tim. And my
just
head's
it's just a
screaming
bad
like,
He's
tell
too
us the
smart for
teams,
that.
Sheldon. Tell us who they are.
No, I don't need to bury that now. But
All right. So you go to
but I
Edmonton.
will say it didn't really become about a money thing once some of these other things were sounding more appealing, right? The physical, not having to go do that. Kevin Lowe really we had some really good conversations. So just like you said, I felt like Superman when we're going to do a
It's
press
so
conference.
funny.
We're going to announce
Yeah,
you the whole kit and caboodle, right? And
it's
so
hilarious.
I come home and again, I'm just like you. I didn't have much. So we're going to have a press conference to announce you. My dad was like, oh my God, it's like, Wayne Gretzky part 2. And so so that was good. I was excited. The first day of training camp, the very first day, when you just do the physicals, you don't even step on the ice, right?
Yeah.
So I go to the rink early. I got an early physical with some other veteran guys, Steve Stais and Ethan Morrow and Dwayne Rollison and Sean Horcup. There's 6 or 7 of us in there having a coffee in the morning, waiting, to go do your physical. And sitting in the training room and just kind of getting to know these guys. And Craig McTavish walks in, and I love Mac T. He walks in and he looks around and he throws some papers on Kenny Lowe's desk. I remember our trainer, and he says, just the guy I wanted to see. And or just the guy I was talking about, he said. And I said, oh yeah? I said, all good things, right? And he said, no. I said, no. He goes, are you effing kidding me? You're not going to be ready for training camp? Oh my God. You're just going to sit back on your big contract? He kind of gave me that in front of all these guys.
Wow.
And so I was hot for about a week. Like he just challenged me in front of these new guys, right? And I'm like, I can't. I said to Kenny Lowe, I go, did he not know the friggin' situation? He goes, no, I thought I told him. I was like, okay. And so as the story goes, I wanted to come back and play earlier. I'm not supposed to play till November, right? At the earliest, late November. And so now I'm skating, now I'm shooting pucks, and now I'm doing everything that I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And I came back that first year, and I came back early. I played 6 games. I get in a fight and blow my shoulder out again, you know? And so I missed a lot of that first season. So that was kind of my welcome to Edmonton bit. And I don't think it was Matt. Like I said, Mac T, I love Mac T. I think he's a high character guy. I think it just probably got put on his lap that I wouldn't be ready. And he didn't know, right? And so that kind of goes with the communication, I think, of the whole. It kind of explains the organization a little bit at that
But
time.
just contrast that to Montreal having Guy Boucher saying, "We believe in you. Take your time. Let's work on your shots. Let's work on you. You'll be a better player." You come here, you're their guy. You know,
Yeah.
you're the $5.5 million guy, and you have the GM screaming at you before the physical.
Yeah.
Start
Well, he
training.
was our coach, but
That's right, your
Mac T was our
coach. Oh,
coach.
even worse.
He was the coach, so he came in and he did that. And like I said, I got my hair on my back to stand up pretty quick, and it stayed that way for a while. And so as I'm hurt, you know, that first year, we're playing in that old Northlands Coliseum, Rexall, I guess. You played there.
It's a dump. Yeah.
It was a dump. It was the worst place in the league. I had conversations with Kevin about the standard in Montreal. As you know, you've played there. The standard is as good as anywhere in the NHL, maybe the best. So as I told you, I had these two small kids. Well, we didn't have a wives lounge. And so I was making these suggestions like, hey, you know, why don't you take a thing where, because you know how you have to walk through all the people who are drunk to get out to the rink?
Yeah.
Like you have to walk through these people who are yelling at you, Souray, you bomb, and whatever, right? And my kids got to sit in that with my ex-wife, who's already hating life, not the easiest, you know, person to get along with at that time. And so I said, I made these suggestions, and finally I was told to shut up, you know, and quit being a silver spooner. And I was making enough money, and yada yada yada.
You are a silver spooner. Yeah.
I was, yeah. I got put in my place, and you know how you have to walk out after the game to that little ramp,
Up
and it
the
was
ramp.
it's all the Oilers cars, so it's minus 50 out, and I got to take two small kids and get in this
Ferrari
car that might start. No, it was a Ford truck with a bunch of windshield chips, because there's nothing else that's going to friggin' work up there. And so my truck might start after the game. And so I suggested, hey, why don't we hire a couple kids, start our cars when the game's over, and they can just pull in by the bus, or at least get our cars warm.
Yeah.
Well, how are we going to organize that? I go, I'll tell you what, my two cousins, if you give them a ticket to the game, they'll do it for all of us. Like, it won't cost us a thing. No, just stick to what you know. Okay. So that's kind of what I was going through, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the experiences I was having, one after another. And then the next year I got healthy, and, you know, did our thing. And so that was 3 years. Next year I had a fine year. The end of that third year, well, the beginning of it, I think it might have been the opening game or a couple games in. We're playing Calgary. I'm going back for an icing. Me and Jerome McGinley are skating back, who I love Jerome too. Classy dude. He goes to poke for the puck. He catches my skate. I go on the end boards. I get a concussion. I miss like a couple months. Now, I don't know about you, because I think you're a smart enough guy, and you are a very, you don't have to be told what to do. I've never had a coach tell me to go fight somebody. I just have never had that. Like, hey, you know, you guys, if you and Weller and Boogie get out there and they put me out there, they're not telling me to fight. I know what the situation is, right? I mean, right, we're not stupid. And so I came back that year in January or February, I think, and we're playing Calgary. We're losing 5-1 after the, you know, second period, and I'm going out, walking out the tunnel, and I'm the last guy to go out. And Tom Rennie kind of pulls me by the jersey and goes, hey, if you want to get even, now's the time. And I was like, okay. So I went out. I said, Jerome, we got to do this. He goes, yeah, well, okay. I don't even know why we're fighting, but okay. And I ended up breaking my hand. And so all this stuff is going on still with Edmonton, right? All these things of like being a silver spooner and da. And so I'm living in LA. I have a place in LA. Olympic break is coming up. So I say, hey, I want to go back to LA and have someone who's done this surgery a million times at Curlin Job or wherever to do this surgery? They say no. No, you're doing it in Edmonton. And at that time, the CBA hadn't changed where, we had a right to a second opinion. It was
Yeah.
like the team had whatever the team says is what you do. You're under contract.
Mhm.
Okay. So I get these pins put in my hand. I get to go home back to LA. In 10 days, the Oilers are playing the Kings, and then we have 2 weeks for Olympic break. I see this doctor for LA, and he says they didn't put, a certain kind of cap on those pins. So like the pin isn't, they were getting stuck in my skin. They're
No
like, you
kidding.
didn't put that. Yeah. So he's like, oh, that's kind of weird. And so we'll do that. We're going to put these caps on, like something seems pretty simple, right? I'm like, I don't
Basic,
know,
yeah.
whatever. Basic. So Olympic break goes on. I'm coming back to, I got to go back to Edmonton. The team's in Nashville. We're going on a road trip, so they leave a couple days early. I got to go back because I'm getting close to being cleared by the doctor. So I got to meet a doctor in Edmonton. So I get to the airport. Now, the day before I'm flying back to Edmonton, I'm in the shower and I look down at my hand and these pins are sticking out 2 inches from my skin. Like they're sticking out of my thing. So I'm like, well, that's weird. So I just push it back in like a hot knife through butter. Doesn't hurt. I don't even feel it. It's like I didn't even think anything of it. So a couple times during the day, these pins are coming out and I'm pushing them back in. I called the doctor. Hey, I got these pins coming. Well, you're coming in tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, good. So the next day I go to the airport and I check in. I just have a over the shoulder bag and I check in and I go to sit down in the airport lounge and I can't put my elbow on my elbow kind of hits the armrest. And I look and my elbow is kind of swollen like a golf ball. And I go, I don't remember doing anything, but whatever, right? On that flight now, I'm getting sick. Like I'm starting to get sick. By the time I got off that flight, I couldn't lift my arm. That's about a 3-hour flight. The trainer meets me at the airport. He has to take my bag off the conveyor belt because I couldn't lift it. And I'm like starting to get like delirious, sweating. He's like, "You okay?" I go, "I don't know. It must have been something I ate, whatever. My arm's like this." He goes, "Okay." So I go home. I'm gonna get a massage that night. So I sit down in the table. The girl comes over to give me a massage. Probably 3, 4, 5 minutes in, I get up. I go, I can't. I'm sweating. I can't stop sweating. I'm sick. That night, I take a blanket and I put it over this heater, and I'm shivering. And I called the trainer and I said, "Hey, dude." No, I didn't call the trainer. I called the doctor. I said, "Hey, I'm really sick." He said, "Well, can you drive yourself to the hospital?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." So I call my dad, right? And my dad, he lives 45 minutes out of town. He comes and gets me. I go to this clinic. The doctor meets me there. Well, I got a really bad staph infection. So I got an ambulance. The ambulance now takes me to the U of A hospital. Now I'm in the ICU for 4 days.
Holy moly.
I got a bone and a blood infection, and they're talking about amputating my hand. They have to recut my hand open. They cut from my middle finger down to about here at the end of my palm on both sides. They got to splint it. Well, now I can't move it, but they splint it back open and it's just oozing pus. And I'm on all sorts of antibiotics that they give cancer patients. Like, dude, it was bad. But the team's on the road, right? The team's on the road now. And so I hadn't had a chance to even call the trainer and really explain what was up and all that kind of stuff. So I don't completely blame it on them, but my buddy comes in one day and he was our strength coach and he said, "How you doing?" Well, I'm in the ICU now, right? I'm hooked up to all this stuff. They had to put a PICC line in through my bicep and go on my heart. And they just dropped antibiotics on my heart so I didn't die. I said, "Are they gonna?" To the nurse one day, I said, "What are they gonna do? Cut my hand off?" And she goes, "Oh, honey, we're not even worried about that. We're worried about this getting to your heart." And at that moment, I put my head back on the pillow and I was like, "Damn! Like this is serious." So the strength coach comes in and he says, "How you doing?" I said, "I've been better." And he said, I said, have you told the coaches or the management? He said, yeah, but they think that you're milking an injury because you don't want to play for the Oilers again. I said, okay. So I picked up the phone. Now you gotta understand, I'm on all this painkillers, I'm on these antibiotics, I'm sitting in the hospital, and I left Kevin Lowe and Daryl Cates a message, a voicemail, and I wasn't happy.